A wedding day should be filled with joy, not terror. But for Catherine Winters, what began as a moment of quiet reflection turned into a nightmare. Alone in her bridal suite, she opened her fiancé's cherished family album, expecting to see smiling faces and celebration. Instead, she found something impossible, a ghost hiding in plain sight. In every photo, partially obscured but unmistakably present, was the same woman. Page after page, the stranger appeared, watching, waiting. Catherine's hands trembled as she reached the final photograph, a chill crawling up her spine as recognition dawned. Could this mysterious figure really be her fiancé's first wife, the woman everyone believed had died 5 years ago? What secrets had James been hiding all this time? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning light filtered through cream-colored curtains, casting a warm glow across Catherine's wedding dress. The vintage-inspired gown hung from the wardrobe door, its delicate lace overlay and modest silhouette reminiscent of a bygone era. She had chosen it specifically because James mentioned once that his mother would have adored such a style. Now staring at it while her heart raced, Catherine wondered how much of her choices had been shaped by a man she was beginning to question. "Kath? You decent?" Melissa's voice preceded 3 sharp knocks. "I've got coffee and croissants." Catherine quickly closed the photo album and slid it beneath a stack of wedding cards. "Come in." Melissa entered, balancing a tray, her bridesmaid dress already perfectly fitted to her athletic frame. She had been Catherine's best friend since their university days, when they'd shared a cramped dormitory and dreams of future success. While Catherine had pursued her passion for art history, eventually securing a position as a conservator at the Westfield Historical Museum, Melissa had built a thriving physical therapy practice. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Melissa said, setting down the tray. "Pre-wedding jitters." "Something like that." Catherine accepted the coffee with trembling hands, having second thoughts about marrying New York's most eligible conservationist. Melissa's tone was light, but her eyes were searching. Catherine forced a smile. "Just nervous." She couldn't bring herself to voice her discovery. Not yet. Not until she understood it herself. She thought back to the charity auction where she'd met James Hayes 18 months ago. He had outbid everyone for a rare first-edition naturalist journal she'd been eyeing for the museum's collection, only to donate it immediately afterward. His knowledge of historical preservation had impressed her, and his charm had been undeniable. Their courtship had been a whirlwind. Museum galas, weekend trips to his family's coastal properties, and intimate dinners where he'd share fascinating stories of his travels. Now she wondered how many of those stories had been true. "The strangest thing happened this morning," Catherine said, testing the waters. "James's Aunt Cordelia dropped off an old family album. She insisted I look through it before the ceremony." "That's sweet," Melissa replied, straightening the veil laid out on the dressing table. "Getting to know the family history before joining it." "Yes, except—" Catherine hesitated. How could she explain what she'd seen without sounding paranoid? Soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The door opened to reveal a hotel staff member carrying a small, wrapped package. "Delivery for the bride," the young woman announced, placing the box on the table before departing. "Another gift?" Melissa asked. Catherine examined the simple brown paper and string. No card, no indication of the sender. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a velvet jewelry box. Inside lay a delicate silver locket. "It's beautiful," Melissa whispered. With mounting dread, Catherine opened the locket. Inside was a tiny photograph, James and a woman she didn't recognize, both smiling broadly at the camera. The woman's face matched the figure lurking in the family album photos. "Who's that with James?" Melissa asked, leaning closer. Catherine closed the locket with a snap. "I think it's Eleanor, his first wife, the one who drowned." "That's odd." Melissa's brow furrowed. "Who would send this today of all days?" Catherine stood suddenly, the coffee forgotten. "I need to speak with James." "You can't. It's bad luck for the groom to see. Luck has nothing to do with what's happening here," Catherine interrupted, reaching for her robe. The elegant silk, another gift from James, now felt restrictive against her skin. "Something isn't right, and I need answers before I walk down that aisle." Catherine locked the bathroom door and leaned against it, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. She had 15 minutes before Melissa would start to worry. 15 minutes to learn everything she could about Eleanor Hayes. The search results appeared quickly. A 5-year-old newspaper clipping dominated the screen. "Prominent conservationists. Wife missing, presumed dead." The accompanying photo showed a younger James, his face appropriately grief-stricken, standing on a dock next to a Coast Guard official. Catherine enlarged the image, scanning the background. Barely visible behind a cluster of reporters stood a blonde woman partially turned away, the same woman from the photos. Catherine scrolled through more articles. Eleanor Hayes, née Blackwood, age 29, had disappeared during a private sailing trip with her husband of 3 years. A sudden storm, a capsized boat, a desperate search. James, the sole survivor, had been found clinging to debris, hypothermic but alive. Eleanor's body was never recovered despite extensive searches. "Presumed dead," Catherine whispered the words, hollow in the marble bathroom. She recalled James mentioning his previous marriage only once, during their 3rd date. "A tragedy I don't like to discuss," he'd said, his voice catching convincingly. "The sea took her, and with her a piece of me." Catherine had respected his grief, never pressing for details. Now she cursed her sensitivity. Digging deeper, Catherine found inconsistencies. In one interview, James claimed they'd been sailing to celebrate their anniversary. In another, he said Eleanor had wanted to overcome her fear of water. The Coast Guard report noted the boat had been found with its emergency beacon disabled. A soft ping announced a new email, her museum colleague responding to her urgent request for information. Records show J.H. established the Eleanor Hayes Conservation Fund 6 months after her disappearance. Initial donation, $3.5 million. Insurance payout, annual gala every May 17th. Her birthday. BTW, why research this today? Aren't you getting married? Catherine ignored the question. $3.5 million, the exact amount of Eleanor's life insurance policy, according to another article she found. The policy had been increased just 3 months before the accident. Another detail caught her eye. Eleanor had worked as a forensic accountant specializing in financial crimes. Before her marriage, she'd been instrumental in several high-profile fraud cases. After marrying James, she'd gradually withdrawn from public life. Catherine's phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "Where are you? Hairstylist waiting." She splashed cold water on her face, trying to clear her thoughts. The woman in the photos couldn't be Eleanor. That would mean she was alive, watching, appearing in family photos taken after her supposed death. It was impossible, yet the alternative was equally disturbing, that James had deliberately inserted her image into family photos taken after her disappearance. But why? As Catherine emerged from the bathroom, she noticed her engagement ring catching the light. The antique sapphire surrounded by diamonds had been a family heirloom, James had claimed. "Unique, like you," he'd said when proposing. She pulled up another image of Eleanor from a charity gala. On her left hand gleamed an identical ring. "Catherine," Melissa called through the door. "Everyone's waiting." "Coming," she replied automatically, her mind racing. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. James had lied about Eleanor, about her death, about their relationship, perhaps even about who she was. Catherine slipped the newspaper clipping into her robe pocket. The wedding was in 2 hours. But before she spoke any vows, she needed to confront her fiancé about the wife he claimed was dead. The wife who seemed to be watching them from the shadows of every photograph. The corridor to the groom's suite stretched like an endless runway. Catherine clutched the photo album and newspaper clipping, her silk robe whispering against her legs as she moved with purpose. Two groomsmen chatting outside James's door straightened when they saw her. "The bride," one exclaimed. "James, you're—" "Ladies here, breaking tradition." "It's fine," Catherine said firmly. "I need a private word." The men exchanged glances but stepped aside. One whispered something about cold feet as she knocked. James opened the door, resplendent in his tailored charcoal suit. His initial smile faltered at her expression. "Catherine, what's wrong?" She pushed past him into the room, waiting until the door closed before speaking. "Who is she, James?" Catherine held up the album, open to a family Christmas gathering. In the background, partially obscured by a doorframe but unmistakable, stood the blonde woman. James's face remained impassive. "I don't understand. She's in every photo." Catherine flipped pages rapidly. "Here at your cousin's wedding, here at the lake house, always watching from the background." She thrust the newspaper clipping forward. "Eleanor isn't dead, is she?" A moment of silence stretched between them. Then James laughed, a practiced, indulgent sound that Catherine had once found charming. "Darling, you're stressed. Wedding day nerves are making you see things." "Don't." Catherine stepped back when he reached for her. "I'm not imagining this. Explain the photos." James's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "Those old photos have been damaged, water stains, developing errors in the exact same pattern, creating the exact same woman." Catherine twisted her engagement ring. "The same ring, James. You gave me Eleanor's ring." Something shifted in James's eyes, a coldness Catherine had glimpsed only once before, when a colleague had challenged his research findings at a gala. "This is ridiculous. We're getting married in less than 2 hours." "Not until you tell me the truth." Catherine held her ground. "Eleanor was an accountant investigating financial crimes. What did she find, James? What happened on that boat?" James moved to the window, his back to her. Outside, caterers bustled across the lawn, arranging flowers for the garden ceremony. "She didn't die?" His voice was so low Catherine almost missed it. "What?" He turned, his composure cracking. "Eleanor didn't die that day. She—" He paused, calculating. "She left me. The storm, the capsized boat, it gave her the perfect opportunity to disappear." Why would she fake her death? Mental health. Issues. She became paranoid, claimed I was hiding things, embezzling from the conservation fund. James's face softened with practiced concern. She needed help, but refused treatment. After she left, I maintained the accident story to protect her reputation. Catherine studied his face, searching for truth. Then why is she in these photos? Why would she come back just to hide in the background? Those aren't real. James stepped forward, reaching for the album. Someone must have doctored them, probably Eleanor herself, part of her delusion. A sharp knock interrupted them. "Mr. Hayes, the officiant needs to review a few details before the ceremony." "One moment," James called, his voice perfectly steady. He turned to Catherine, taking her hands. "Darling, I should have told you everything. After the honeymoon, we'll discuss this properly. For now, our guests are arriving. You should finish getting ready." Catherine looked down at their joined hands, at the ring that had belonged to a woman who might still be alive, given to her by a man who had just admitted to a years-long lie. "Catherine?" James prompted, his grip tightening slightly. Behind him, the door opened. James's best man peered in. "Everything okay? People are starting to ask questions." Catherine pulled her hands away. "The ceremony will be delayed," she said quietly. Catherine locked herself in the bridal suite, ignoring the gentle knocks and concerned voices outside. She picked up an ivory wedding invitation from the vanity. Elegant letterpress on handmade paper, announcing the union of Catherine Winters and James Hayes. The words now seemed to mock her. "Catherine," her mother's voice tinged with worry. "Darling, what's happening? The guests are all seated." "I need time," Catherine called back, tracing the embossed edges of the invitation. "Tell everyone there's been a slight delay." She heard murmured conversation, then Melissa's voice. "I'll handle it. Mrs. Winters, why don't you check that the caterers have enough champagne ready?" Footsteps retreated. A moment later, Melissa spoke through the door, her tone low. "Kath, it's just me. Let me in." Catherine opened the door enough for her friend to slip inside, then relocked it. "What happened with James?" Melissa asked, taking in Catherine's tear-streaked makeup and rumpled robe. "He lied about everything." Catherine handed Melissa the newspaper clipping. "His first wife didn't drown. He says she ran away, had mental problems. But she's in all these photos, Melissa, watching us, watching me." Melissa examined the clipping with a frown. "That's disturbing, but maybe there's an explanation. He gave me her ring." Catherine twisted the sapphire band, claimed it was a family heirloom when it was his first wife's. "Have you called the police? And tell them what? That my fiancé's supposedly dead wife might be stalking us? That he lied about her drowning?" Catherine paced the room. "I sound insane." Her phone rang. An unknown number. Catherine answered hesitantly. "Is this Catherine Winters?" A man's voice, unfamiliar. "Yes, who's this?" "Michael Brennan, James's business partner. We've never met, but—" He paused. "Are you alone?" Catherine glanced at Melissa. "I'm with my maid of honor." "What's this about?" "I shouldn't be calling, but I saw the announcement in the paper." His voice dropped. "There are things you should know before you marry him." "About Eleanor?" Catherine asked sharply. A long silence. "He told you about her? That she didn't actually—" "Drown? Yes, just now." "Did he tell you why she left?" "He claims she had mental health issues, was paranoid." Michael's bitter laugh crackled through the phone. "Classic James. Eleanor was investigating financial irregularities in our conservation fund. She found evidence that James was siphoning donor money into offshore accounts. The night before the accident, she told me she had proof." Catherine's knees weakened. She sank onto the edge of the bed. "Are you saying he tried to—" "I don't know what happened on that boat," Michael interrupted. "But the Eleanor I knew wasn't unstable or paranoid. She was brilliant and methodical." "Have you seen her since?" "No. But strange things happen at the office. Files moved, emails accessed. Security cameras catch glimpses of someone after hours." His voice dropped further. "I think she's gathering evidence." A sharp knock on the door made Catherine jump. "Ms. Winters?" The wedding planner's voice. "The guests are getting restless. Should we make an announcement?" "One moment," Catherine called, her mind racing. She returned to the phone. "Michael, I need to go." "Be careful, Catherine." She ended the call, meeting Melissa's concerned gaze. "What now?" Melissa asked. Catherine looked at her wedding dress, pristine and waiting. Her parents had spent a small fortune on this day. Guests had traveled from across the country. The press, attracted by James's conservation celebrity, waited outside for photographs. "I need to think," Catherine said, reaching for her makeup kit. "Tell them we'll begin in 30 minutes. "You're going through with it?" Melissa sounded incredulous. Catherine met her friend's eyes. "Until I understand what's happening, I need to play along. If Eleanor is alive and watching, I need to find her. And if James is dangerous—" She steadied her voice. "I need proof, not suspicions." As Melissa left to make the announcement, Catherine picked up the wedding invitation again. Instead of seeing a promise of happiness, she now saw it as something else entirely, a lure in an elaborate trap. The wedding march began, its familiar notes now sounding like a funeral dirge to Catherine's ears. She clutched her father's arm. With one hand and her grandmother's blue silk handkerchief with the other, the last genuine thing in this charade. The small square of fabric, embroidered with her grandmother's initials, had been tucked into her bouquet as her something blue. Now it was clasped in her trembling fingers, a talisman against the lies surrounding her. "You look beautiful," her father whispered, patting her hand as they waited at the end of the garden path. "But tense, cold feet." Catherine forced a smile, just overwhelmed. "James is a good man," he assured her. "Your mother and I couldn't be happier." If only they knew, Catherine thought as they began their procession. The gathered guests rose, smiling faces turned toward her. Camera flashes sparked like lightning. Catherine scanned the crowd, searching for a blonde woman, for any sign of Eleanor, but saw only friends and family beaming with celebration. James waited at the altar, handsome and composed. Only Catherine could see the tension in his jaw, the calculated warmth in his smile. As her father placed her hand in James's, she felt a chill despite the warm summer air. "You look radiant," James murmured, for the guests' benefit. "Let's get this over with," Catherine replied through her smile. The officiant began the ceremony, his words about trust and honesty landing like stones in Catherine's stomach. She responded mechanically when prompted, her mind racing through possible scenarios. If Eleanor was alive, watching, where would she be? What evidence could Catherine find? And if James had attempted to kill Eleanor once, what might he do to a second wife who discovered his secrets? If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace, the officiant intoned. Catherine held her breath, scanning the crowd again. A rustling near the back caught her attention. A latecomer slipping into a seat. For a moment Catherine thought she glimpsed blonde hair, but the figure was obscured by other guests. The moment passed. No objections. James squeezed her hand, a warning disguised as affection. When the time came for vows, Catherine's voice nearly failed her. Each word felt like perjury. She focused on her grandmother's handkerchief, drawing strength from its connection to her past, to truth. "I do," she finally said, the shortest possible answer. The ring. James slid onto her finger. A simple platinum band to accompany the sapphire engagement ring felt cold and constricting. When she placed its match on his hand, she wondered how many lies those fingers had crafted. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared. "You may kiss the bride." James leaned in, his whisper hidden by applause. "We'll discuss your behavior later." Then he kissed her, a perfect public display of affection that made Catherine's skin crawl. As they turned to face their guests as husband and wife, Catherine's gaze locked with a server at the back of the gathering. The young woman's face registered shock before she quickly looked away, disappearing toward the reception tent. That face. Catherine had seen it before. Not Eleanor, but someone from the photographs. A relative, a friend, someone who recognized Catherine from surveillance. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present Mr. and Mrs. Hayes," the officiant announced. The crowd erupted in cheers. James waved, the picture of happiness, his arm firmly around Catherine's waist, supportive to onlookers, restraining to his bride. As they processed down the aisle, Catherine clutched her grandmother's handkerchief tighter. She was now legally bound to a man she believed capable of attempted murder, trapped in a performance she needed to maintain until she found answers. The reception awaited, hours more of pretense, with James watching her every move. But somewhere, in that crowd, Catherine was certain, were eyes that knew the truth. She just had to find them before it was too late. Champagne flowed, music played, laughter echoed through the elegant reception tent. Catherine moved through it all like an actress in a play, smiling on cue, accepting congratulations, her arm linked with James's as they made their rounds. His fingers dug into her elbow whenever she strayed too far. "You're hurting me," she murmured through her smile when they paused between guests. "And you're embarrassing me," he replied, his lips barely moving. "Whatever game you're playing, it ends now." The server Catherine had noticed during the ceremony was nowhere to be found. Had she imagined the recognition in the woman's eyes? "Mrs. Hayes!" An elderly woman approached, arms outstretched. "I'm Cordelia, James's aunt. So lovely to finally meet you." Catherine recognized her as the one who had delivered the photo album that morning, a lifetime ago it seemed. "The album you brought was fascinating," Catherine said carefully. "So many family memories." "Oh, I'm just the messenger, dear." Cordelia patted her hand. "Eleanor asked me to make sure you received it today." James's grip tightened painfully. On Catherine's arm, "Aunt Cordelia has been confused lately," he interjected smoothly. "Eleanor has been gone for years, remember?" The old woman's eyes narrowed slightly. "Of course, my mistake." She turned to Catherine. "You remind me of her, you know, same artistic sensibility. She was a photographer before—" "Why don't I get you some more champagne, Aunt?" James interrupted, signaling a waiter. As he turned away, Cordelia leaned close to Catherine. "The boathouse, when you can get away." Then she stepped back, smiling blandly as James returned. Catherine's mind raced. Cordelia knew something, perhaps everything. But how could she slip away without James noticing? Her opportunity came during the meal, when James was cornered by a persistent environmental journalist. Catherine excused herself to freshen up and made her way through the back of the tent, past busy catering staff, toward the property's small lake. The guest book lay open on a table near the exit. Catherine paused, seeing a message written in unfamiliar handwriting. "He will do to you what he did to me." The ink was still fresh. Heart pounding, Catherine hurried down the path to the boathouse. The old wooden structure stood at the water's edge, its windows dark. She approached cautiously, glancing back to ensure she wasn't followed. "Hello?" she called softly, pushing open the weathered door. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of late afternoon sunlight. Fishing equipment and old oars hung on the walls. The place appeared empty, until Catherine noticed a manila envelope on a workbench. Her name was written across it. Inside, she found financial documents, spreadsheets, bank statements, offshore account details, all annotated in meticulous handwriting. A sticky note explained, "James embezzled 4.7 million from conservation donors. These prove it." A noise outside made Catherine freeze. Footsteps on the dock. "Catherine," James's voice. "I know you're in there." She quickly folded the documents and stuffed them into her bodice, beneath the structured wedding gown. James appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the setting sun. "What are you doing?" "I needed air," Catherine replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "The champagne went to my head." He stepped closer, his expression calculating. "In the boathouse? Odd choice." "I was curious. We haven't explored the property much." She gestured around. "It's charming, in a rustic way." James's eyes scanned the space, landing on the empty envelope Catherine had failed to hide. "What's that?" Before she could answer, a commotion erupted from the direction of the reception. Voices called their names. "The cake cutting," James said, his tone neutral, while his eyes remained suspicious. "We're being summoned." He held out his hand. "Shall we, wife?" Catherine took his hand, feeling like she was grasping a viper. As they walked back toward the celebration, she felt the documents pressing against her skin. Evidence of James's crimes, delivered by a woman who was supposed to be dead. "We're leaving early," James informed her as they neared the tent. "I've changed our honeymoon plans. We'll discuss everything privately." Paris. Catherine stared at the unfamiliar plane tickets in James's hand as they sat in the airport lounge. "We were supposed to go to Santorini. Change of plans." James sipped his scotch, eyes scanning the departure board. "I thought we could use something more private. A friend's cabin in the Colorado mountains. Secluded, peaceful, perfect for sorting out any misunderstandings." Catherine's mouth went dry. The documents from the boathouse were now safely hidden in her toiletry bag, transferred during a brief moment alone while changing out of her wedding dress. She tried texting Melissa about her discoveries, but James had hovered nearby until they left the reception, making private communication impossible. "What about our luggage?" "I packed for Greece, not mountains. Already handled. New clothes are waiting at the cabin." James checked his watch. "Our flight board's in 20 minutes. Catherine excused herself to use the restroom, frantically searching for a way to contact someone. Her phone had mysteriously lost its signal despite full bars before entering the lounge. The bathroom attendant watched her too closely. Another of James's arrangements. With no options, she returned to James, who wordlessly handed her a glass of champagne. "To new beginnings," he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. Catherine sipped cautiously. hyper-aware of the liquid's taste. James wouldn't drug her in public, would he? But then, who would notice a bride appearing tipsy after her wedding day? The cabin, when they arrived hours later, was beautiful in a forbidding way. Rustic luxury perched on a mountainside, surrounded by dense forest, with panoramic windows overlooking a steep valley. Catherine estimated they were at least 30 minutes from the nearest neighbor. "No cell service," James announced, setting down their bags. "Complete digital detox, just what we need." Catherine explored cautiously while James built a fire. The interior was immaculate but impersonal, a high-end rental, not the friend's cabin he'd described. In the bedroom, she found new clothes in her size hanging in the closet, tags removed. How long had he planned this? While unpacking her toiletry bag, Catherine's fingers brushed against the hidden documents. She needed to find a phone. Contact Michael or Melissa, but the cabin had no landline she could discover. In the kitchen, Catherine opened cabinets, noting the well-stocked pantry. "How long are we staying?" "A week." James appeared behind her, making her jump. "Maybe 2. However long it takes." "For what?" "To sort things out." He placed his hands on her shoulders. "You've been confused, Catherine. Manipulated." She turned to face him. "By whom?" "I'm not sure yet, but someone's been feeding you lies." His grip tightened. The doctored photos, the mysterious messages. "Someone wants to hurt me through you." "Eleanor?" Catherine asked directly. James's expression darkened. "Eleanor is gone. Whoever is pretending to be her has their own agenda." That night, Catherine lay awake beside her new husband, listening to his measured breathing. When certain he was asleep, she slipped out of bed and padded silently through the cabin, searching for anything useful. A hidden phone, a radio, car keys. In the living room, she noticed a small red light blinking from a bookshelf. Moving closer, she discovered a tiny camera concealed among decorative objects, its lens aimed at the sofa. Further inspection revealed another in the kitchen, one in the hallway. Catherine's blood ran cold. The entire cabin was under surveillance. She returned to bed, mind racing. James was watching her every move, probably reviewing footage each time she was alone. The isolated location, the surveillance, the sudden change of plans. This wasn't a honeymoon. It was a trap. As she lay rigid beside James, Catherine realized with horrible clarity this might be exactly what had happened to Eleanor before her drowning accident. History was repeating itself, with Catherine cast in the role of the doomed second wife. She needed to escape, but first, she needed to understand exactly what she was up against. Catherine waited until James's breathing deepened into the steady rhythm of sleep. 3 hours of pretending to be peacefully slumbering beside him had been excruciating, each minute stretching like an hour. Now, with the cabin's digital clock reading 2:17 a.m., she carefully slid from beneath the covers. The mountain night was pitch black beyond the windows. Catherine navigated by memory and the faint glow of emergency lights along the baseboards. She needed to search the cabin without triggering the cameras she'd discovered, which meant staying out of their sight lines while somehow disguising her actions. In the kitchen, she filled a glass with water, an innocent explanation if James woke. Then she began a methodical exploration, opening drawers silently, checking for anything useful. A forgotten phone, a map, a weapon. The bookshelf in the living room drew her attention. While pretending to browse earlier, she'd noted an eclectic collection: wilderness survival guides, financial textbooks, and classic novels. Now, in the dim light, she examined each spine carefully. One book stood out, a copy of Wuthering Heights, with a worn binding. Catherine recalled James mentioning once that Eleanor had been obsessed with Victorian literature. She pulled it from the shelf, finding it unusually heavy. Inside, the book had been hollowed out. Nestled in the cavity was a small leather journal, with the initials EH embossed on the cover. Heart racing, Catherine retreated to the bathroom, the one room she'd confirmed had no cameras, and locked the door. Sitting on the edge of the tub, she opened the journal with trembling fingers. The first entry was dated 6 years ago. James proposed today. I said yes. The sapphire is beautiful, though I would have preferred something less ostentatious. He says it belonged to his grandmother, but something about his explanation seems rehearsed. Catherine touched her own identical ring, reflexively. Later entries chronicled the early days of Eleanor's marriage, initially happy but gradually darkening. Found discrepancies in the conservation fund accounts, small at first, but growing. When I mentioned them, James became defensive, accused me of not trusting him. James installed a new security system, says it's for protection, but the cameras seem aimed at monitoring me, not intruders. Discovered 2.3 tainters transferred to an account in the Caymans. When confronted, James claimed it was legitimate. Conservation land purchases. The documentation looks convincing, but doesn't match what I found in the official records. The entries grew increasingly disturbing. James tracks my phone, monitors my calls, isolated me from colleagues who might have helped. I've been so blind. Found evidence connecting James to 3 previous conservation funds that mysteriously went bankrupt after large land acquisition transfers. Same pattern, different names. He's done this before. Planning to leave. Gathered enough evidence to expose everything. Michael has copies of the documents. If anything happens to me, he knows what to do. The final entry chilled Catherine to her core. James is taking me sailing tomorrow. Insists it will heal our relationship. I've hidden backup documentation at the cabin. If I don't return, look behind the loose stone in the fireplace. And to whoever finds this, run. Catherine closed the journal, mind racing. Eleanor had planned her escape, had evidence hidden somewhere in this very cabin. The loose stone in the fireplace, she needed to check it immediately. A soft knock at the bathroom door froze her in place. Catherine. James's voice deceptively gentle. Are you all right? You've been in there quite a while. Just feeling a little unwell, she called back, quickly hiding the journal in her robe pocket. Too much wedding champagne, I think. Open the door, he insisted, the gentleness evaporating. I want to make sure you're okay. Catherine flushed the toilet by seconds, splashed water on her face, and hid the journal in her toiletry bag before opening the door. James stood there, eyes alert despite the hour. Find anything interesting? He asked, his tone making it clear this wasn't about her health. He knew. Somehow he knew. Catherine met James's calculating gaze with feigned confusion. Find what? I was just feeling sick. At precisely the time when the security system does its nightly reboot? Quite a coincidence. His eyes flickered to her toiletry bag. Thinking quickly, Catherine leaned against the doorframe, allowing her robe to fall open slightly at the neck. I couldn't sleep. Wedding night nerves, I suppose. The diversion worked. James's suspicion momentarily gave way to a different kind of interest. Catherine suppressed her revulsion as he stepped closer. Come back to bed, he murmured, his hand settling possessively on her waist. We should properly begin our marriage. Catherine forced a smile. Let me freshen up first. Once alone again, she moved her treasures, Eleanor's journal and the financial documents, to a more secure hiding place inside the lining of her cosmetic case. Then she returned to James, enduring his touch while planning her escape. Dawn found Catherine wide awake beside her sleeping husband. The night had been a performance, one that had bought her time, but left her feeling hollow and used. Now, with pale light filtering through the pines, she enacted the next phase of her plan. Slipping from bed, she dressed quickly and silently in hiking clothes laid out the previous evening. She moved through the cabin with deliberate casualness, knowing the cameras were watching. In the kitchen, she prepared coffee, setting out 2 mugs while hiding a protein bar and water bottle in her jacket pockets. The car keys had to be somewhere. Catherine methodically searched likely spots, key hooks, entryway table, James's jacket, while maintaining the appearance of preparing breakfast. Nothing. Finally, she checked his pants pockets from yesterday, carefully draped over a chair. There, the familiar shape of car keys. Catherine palmed them while pretending to fold the garment. Outside, misty mountain air filled her lungs as she called back through the door, "Going for a quick morning walk. Coffee's ready when you wake up." She walked normally down the gravel driveway until rounding a bend that obscured the cabin. Then she broke into a run toward where they'd parked the rental SUV yesterday. The vehicle sat waiting, dew-covered and promising freedom. Catherine's hands shook as she pressed the unlock button. The responding beep was jarringly loud in the morning stillness. She slid behind the wheel, inserted the key, and turned it. Nothing happened. The dashboard remained dark. Catherine tried. Again, heart pounding. Still nothing, not even the click of an attempted start. Popping the hood, she discovered why. Essential components had been removed from the engine. The car was deliberately disabled. Going somewhere? James stood 15 feet away, barefoot in sweatpants and a t-shirt, holding a mug of coffee. The casual posture was belied by his cold expression. "Just wanted to get something from the car," Catherine improvised. "At 6:30 in the morning? With your purse?" He gestured to the bag slung across her body, the one containing her hidden evidence. "I was restless. Thought I'd take a drive, clear my head." James approached slowly. "There's nowhere to go, Catherine. The nearest town is 40 miles away. No cell service for 20, and now no car." He held out his hand. "Give me the keys." Catherine realized with sickening clarity that he'd anticipated this escape attempt, just as he'd likely anticipated Eleanor's. "James," she tried, forcing calm into her voice, "this is crazy. I'm your wife. Why would I want to leave?" "The same reason you were searching the cabin last night. The same reason you visited the boathouse during our reception." He stepped closer. "What did you find, Catherine?" "Nothing. I don't know what you're talking about." His expression hardened. "I saw the empty envelope at the boathouse. I know someone's been feeding you lies. Was it Michael, my confused aunt? Or have you been in contact with Eleanor all along?" Catherine retreated a step. "You told me Eleanor ran away with mental health issues, and you didn't believe me." James extended his hand again. "The keys, Catherine. Then we'll go inside and have a long overdue conversation about trust." With no options left, Catherine surrendered the keys. As James's fingers closed around them, she realized she'd just lost her first attempt at freedom, but not her last. Back inside the cabin, James made a show of preparing breakfast, slicing fruit, whisking eggs, brewing fresh coffee, while Catherine sat at the kitchen island, her purse still clutched protectively in her lap. The domestic scene was surreal in its calculated normality. "You must be hungry after your morning walk," James said, sliding a plate of food in front of her. Catherine ignored it. "How long are you planning to keep me here?" "Keep you?" James laughed, the sound hollow. "Catherine, you're my wife. We're on our honeymoon. This isn't a prison. Then why disable the car? Mountain roads are dangerous. I didn't want you driving alone, unfamiliar with the terrain." He sipped his coffee. "Your safety is my priority." The practiced concern in his voice made Catherine's skin crawl. She needed to regain some control in this situation. Psychological warfare worked both ways. "I spoke with Michael," she said carefully, watching his reaction. "He told me about the money Eleanor found, about the offshore accounts." A flicker of something, anger, fear, crossed James's face before his mask of calm returned. "Michael has his own agenda. He's been embezzling from the foundation for years. Eleanor discovered it, and he's been deflecting blame ever since." "That's not what her journal says." James set down his coffee cup with deliberate slowness. "What journal?" Catherine silently cursed her slip. "The journal the police found after her disappearance. Michael mentioned it." There was no journal. James moved around the island toward her. "What exactly did you find last night, Catherine?" She rose, maintaining distance between them. "Nothing. Like I said, I was feeling sick. Then you won't mind if I check your bags? His tone remained conversational, but his eyes had hardened. To put my mind at ease. This is ridiculous. Catherine backed toward the hallway. I'm going to take a shower. While James finished preparing breakfast, Catherine locked herself in the bathroom, her mind racing. She needed a weapon, a way to communicate, anything to shift the power balance. On impulse, she turned on the shower and quickly searched the bathroom for anything useful, finding only standard toiletries. When she emerged 30 minutes later, James was sitting in the living room, reading. He'd placed her purse, clearly searched, on the coffee table. Feel better? He asked pleasantly. Catherine nodded, noticing the journal and financial documents were still hidden in her cosmetic case. Either he hadn't found her hiding place or was waiting to see what she would do. I think we should talk, she said, taking a seat across from him. About Eleanor. James closed his book. What about her? If she didn't drown, if she ran away, why haven't you divorced her? Legally, we can't be married if you're still married to her. I filed papers claiming abandonment. James's explanation sounded rehearsed. After 5 years, it was finalized. Everything is perfectly legal. And the photos? How do you explain her appearing in family pictures taken after her disappearance? James's jaw tightened. As I said, they've been doctored. Someone is trying to manipulate you, make you question me. Catherine pressed on. Why would anyone do that? My conservation work has made enemies, developers, poachers, corrupt officials. Or perhaps someone wants the Foundation's money. He leaned forward. Which is why we need to trust each other completely, Catherine. While he spoke, Catherine noticed a kitchen drawer slightly ajar. Inside, she glimpsed knife handles, if she could get to the kitchen unnoticed. I want to trust you, James, she said, softening her tone, but you've made it difficult. The changed honeymoon, the disabled car, the surveillance cameras. Cameras. James's eyebrows rose in feigned surprise. What cameras? The ones hidden around the cabin. I found them last night. James's mask slipped momentarily, revealing calculation beneath. The cabin comes with a security system, standard for remote properties. I should have mentioned it. Catherine stood. I'd like some tea. Would you like some? As she moved to the kitchen, James's voice followed her. You know what's interesting about Eleanor? She also preferred tea over coffee. Catherine reached the drawer, sliding it open while filling the kettle. Her fingers closed around a hunting knife's wooden handle, which she quickly slipped into her sleeve. We have more in common than you realize, she replied, feeling the knife's weight against her arm, a small victory in their deadly game. 3 days passed in a careful dance of pretense. Catherine kept the hunting knife hidden beneath her mattress, retrieving it only when showering. The one place she knew was camera-free. She played the role of confused but conciliatory wife, gradually appearing to accept James's explanations while secretly searching for the loose stone in the fireplace. Mentioned in Eleanor's journal, James maintained his solicitous husband act while watching her every move. He prepared elaborate meals, suggested board games, and initiated physical affection that Catherine endured while plotting. Neither mentioned the car, the cameras, or Eleanor. Yet these unspoken subjects hung between them like smoke. On the 4th morning, as Catherine stood at the kitchen window watching yet another perfect mountain sunrise, the distant sound of an engine broke the silence. A vehicle was approaching. James appeared beside her instantly. Were you expecting someone? How could I be? Catherine replied. No phone, remember? They watched together as a white delivery van navigated the winding driveway, finally parking near the front door. The logo on its side read, Mountain Provisions. Did you order groceries? Catherine asked, hope rising at this unexpected contact with the outside world. Standing delivery, James explained, his voice tight. Scheduled months ago before we changed honeymoon plans. Wait here. But Catherine was already moving toward the door. This might be her only chance to communicate with someone from the outside. I'll help carry things in, she called over her shoulder. The delivery driver was a young woman with a freckled face and practical ponytail. She smiled as Catherine opened the door. "Morning. Got your weekly delivery. Where would you like it?" "Kitchen is fine," Catherine answered, stepping aside. To her disappointment, James appeared immediately, positioning himself between her and the driver. "I've got it, honey," he said, taking the first box. "Why don't you put on some coffee for our guest?" Reluctantly, Catherine moved to the kitchen, mind racing for a way to signal distress without alerting James. As she prepared coffee, she palmed a teaspoon, then deliberately dropped it near the driver's feet as she set down a heavy box. "Oh, I'll get that," Catherine said, crouching beside the young woman. "Please help," she whispered urgently. "I'm being held here. Call police." The driver's eyes widened slightly, but her expression remained neutral as she straightened. "Thanks for the coffee, but I can't stay. 4 more deliveries this morning." Had she understood? Catherine couldn't tell. James supervised the unloading with calculated hospitality, maintaining one-sided conversation about mountain weather and road conditions. His hand rested possessively on Catherine's lower back, applying subtle pressure whenever she tried to engage directly with the driver. As the final box was delivered, Catherine made another attempt. "This place is so isolated. You must be our only visitor this week." "Oh, we're just one service," the driver replied casually. "The property management company checks in every few days. And I saw a hiker on the ridge trail yesterday. Blonde. Woman took photos of the cabin." Catherine felt James stiffen beside her. "A hiker?" he asked too casually. "Did she come near the property?" "Not that I saw." The driver collected her clipboard. "Need a signature here, please." James signed quickly, ushering the driver toward the door. "Thanks for the delivery. Drive safely." "Wait," Catherine called. "Do you have a business card, in case we need to change our order?" The driver turned back, reaching into her pocket. "Sure thing." James intercepted the card. "I'll handle any changes. Thank you." Within moments, the driver was gone, the sound of her van fading down the mountain road. Catherine stared after her, hope fading with each passing second. "Blonde hiker," James mused, closing the door with disturbing gentleness. "Taking photos of our cabin. Interesting coincidence, isn't it?" "Is it?" Catherine began unpacking groceries, hiding her face. "Almost as interesting as your little whispered message." James leaned against the counter, studying her. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" Catherine froze. "A jar of pasta sauce halfway to the pantry. I don't know what you mean. The cameras have audio, Catherine." James took the jar from her rigid fingers. Every room except the bathroom, every word recorded, including, "Please help, I'm being held here." Her last hope of outside intervention vanished. But one detail remained. A blonde woman was watching. The cabin. Someone was out there, perhaps the same someone who had left Eleanor's journal for her to find. The grocery delivery changed everything. James's carefully constructed facade cracked, revealing the predator beneath. He no longer pretended they were on a normal honeymoon. Instead, openly monitoring Catherine's movements and sleeping with her purse and shoes in the locked master bedroom closet. The kitchen knives disappeared. The bathroom door lock was removed for her safety. Catherine found herself in the paradoxical position of feeling both more endangered and more hopeful. James's escalating control confirmed her worst fears about his intentions, but the delivery driver's mention of a blonde woman watching the cabin suggested she wasn't alone in this fight. That evening, as sunset painted the mountains in fiery hues, Catherine stood at the panoramic living room windows, ostensibly admiring the view while methodically scanning the tree line. James moved restlessly behind her, checking window locks, adjusting surveillance cameras, repeatedly peering through binoculars at the surrounding forest. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Catherine remarked, tracking his reflection in the glass. "So peaceful." James didn't respond, focused on something through the binoculars. Catherine followed his gaze to a rocky outcropping among the pines, but saw nothing unusual. "Problem?" she asked. "Just wildlife?" He lowered the binoculars. Bears in these mountains. Dangerous if provoked. The warning in his tone wasn't subtle. Catherine turned from the window, noticing how James had positioned the binoculars on the side table, within his reach, not hers. "I think I'll read before dinner," she said casually, moving toward the bookshelf where she'd found Eleanor's journal. "Take this." James offered a thriller from the coffee table. "I've already checked it. Nothing hidden inside." Catherine accepted the book with a neutral expression, inwardly seething at his blatant control. As she settled onto the sofa, James disappeared into the kitchen to prepare dinner, leaving the binoculars tantalizingly unattended. The moment he was occupied with chopping vegetables, Catherine moved swiftly to the window, raising the binoculars to her eyes. She focused on the outcropping where James had been looking, adjusting the focus dial. There, a flash of movement among the trees. Catherine's breath caught as she glimpsed a figure partially concealed behind a large pine. Someone was definitely watching the cabin. The sound of James's footsteps sent her hurrying back to the sofa, the book open on her lap by the time he appeared in the doorway. "Enjoying the story?" he asked, eyes narrowing at her flushed cheeks. "It's predictable," she replied. "Man with secrets, woman in danger. I think I know how it ends." James's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps it will surprise you." After dinner, while washing dishes, Catherine noticed a black SUV slowly ascending the mountain road toward the cabin. James saw it too, his body tensing as he moved to the window. "Stay inside," he ordered, grabbing a jacket and heading for the door. "Who is it?" Catherine asked, heart racing at this second unexpected visitor. "Property management, probably. I'll handle it." The moment the door closed behind him, Catherine dashed to their bedroom. With James occupied outside, this might be her chance to find whatever was hidden behind the loose stone in the fireplace. The bedroom fireplace was smaller than the living room's, faced with rough-hewn river rocks. Catherine ran her fingers along each stone, pressing, pulling, searching for movement. Near the right side, a palm-sized stone shifted slightly under pressure. Catherine pried at its edges until it came loose, revealing a small cavity. Inside was a waterproof pouch containing a USB drive, a small notebook, and a folded document. Footsteps on the porch sent her scrambling to replace everything, but there wasn't time. Catherine grabbed only the USB drive before pushing the stone roughly back into place and hurrying to the bed. The front door opened. Low voices conversed briefly before the door closed again. James appeared in the bedroom doorway, something unreadable in his expression. "That was Frank, the caretaker," he said, studying her. "Claims he saw someone prowling around the property last night, a woman." Catherine feigned surprise, her fingers closing around the USB drive hidden in her palm. "Really? Did he call the police?" "No need. I'll handle any intruders." James's gaze drifted to the fireplace, then back to Catherine. "What have you been doing while I was outside?" "Waiting for you," she lied, meeting his eyes steadily, while the evidence of Eleanor's final stand pressed into her flesh. "Who else would I be expecting?" Dark clouds gathered over the mountains by midday, their ominous mass promising the storm that had been forecast all week. Catherine watched their approach from the porch, the USB drive now safely hidden in her. A bra, the one place James wouldn't search without her knowledge. She had no way to access its contents, but possessing it gave her a fragile sense of power. James had grown increasingly agitated as the day progressed, alternating between checking windows and making cryptic phone calls from the porch just out of her earshot. The caretaker's report of a prowler had clearly unsettled him. "Storm's coming," he announced, joining her on the porch. "We should secure everything." The wind picked up as they worked, bringing the scent of rain and ozone. Catherine helped James stack firewood and close storm shutters, using the opportunity to scan the tree line for any sign of her unknown ally. The forest remained still, the watcher, if still present, well concealed. Thunder rumbled in the distance as they finished. Inside, James methodically checked the generator and emergency supplies. "We could lose power," he explained, filling containers with water. "Uzi, Happens often up here during storms. Catherine helped mechanically, her mind racing. A power outage would disable the surveillance cameras, at least temporarily. It might be her best chance to escape, or to find the remaining evidence in the fireplace. The storm hit with sudden ferocity just after sunset. Rain lashed against the windows, while wind howled through the pines. Lightning cracked, illuminating the cabin in stark flashes, followed by thunder that shook the very foundation. They were eating dinner when the lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. The cabin plunged into darkness broken only by intermittent lightning. "Stay put," James ordered, his voice unnaturally tense. "I'll get the generator started." As his footsteps receded toward the utility room, Catherine remained at the table, eyes adjusting to the darkness. Without electricity, the cameras would be blind. Without light, James wouldn't immediately notice if she moved. She silently rose and felt her way toward the bedroom, intent on retrieving the remaining items from the fireplace. A flash of lightning illuminated her path, followed by absolute darkness. A crash and curse from the utility room suggested James was having trouble with the generator. Catherine quickened her pace, reaching the bedroom fireplace and dropping to her knees. Her fingers found the loose stone, worked it free. Lightning flashed again. The hiding place was empty. Catherine's heart sank. James must have found it. Perhaps even before her earlier discovery. She'd gotten only the USB drive. The notebook and document were gone. A crackling sound from the living room startled her. Static, then a mechanical voice. "Severe weather warning for Boulder County. Flash flooding reported on mountain roads. All residents advised to..." A weather radio had activated automatically. Catherine hurried back to the living room, following the sound to a shelf where an emergency radio glowed with battery power. Road. Washouts reported on County Highways 7, 19, and 46. Avoid all travel. Repeat, avoid all travel. Emergency services limited during... The roads were impassable. Even if she could escape the cabin, there was nowhere to go. Radio activated. James observed, returning with a flashlight. The beam caught Catherine standing by the shelf, her expression revealing disappointment. "Useful little device. Automatic weather alerts." His light moved to the windows, where rain sheeted against glass. "No one's going anywhere tonight?" The flashlight beam lowered, illuminating a large hunting rifle James now held in his other hand. "Precaution," he explained, noting her alarmed expression. "Wild animals get desperate during storms. Sometimes they try to come inside." Catherine understood the threat wasn't about wildlife. The rifle was a message. The power outage wouldn't be her opportunity. It was his. The generator kicked in with a mechanical whine. Lights flickered back on. Security cameras reactivating. On the monitor display by the door, Catherine caught a glimpse of the cabin's exterior cameras. For a brief second, illuminated by security lights and partially obscured by rain, a figure stood at the edge of the trees watching the cabin. Female, blonde. James followed her gaze to the monitor, his expression hardening as he raised the rifle slightly. "Looks like we might have company," he said softly. "Someone who doesn't understand boundaries." Catherine's fingers brushed the USB drive hidden against her skin. She wasn't alone in this fight, but neither was James. The storm intensified through the night, wind screaming around the cabin's corners like a living thing. Catherine lay awake beside James, listening to his measured breathing and wondering if he was truly asleep or merely waiting, rifle propped against his side of the bed. Rain hammered the roof in rhythmic waves. Thunder crashed, seemingly directly overhead. The security system's monitor glowed from the dresser, cycling through exterior camera views every 10 seconds. North side, east side, south side, west side, a constant surveillance loop that had revealed no further glimpses of the blonde watcher. Catherine must have drifted off eventually. She woke suddenly to absolute stillness. The rain had stopped, the wind died down, something had disturbed her sleep. A sound. There it was again, a soft scraping, like wood against wood. The back door. Beside her, James was already sitting up, reaching for the rifle. "Stay here," he whispered, sliding from the bed with practiced silence. Catherine held her breath, straining to hear. Footsteps moved through the kitchen, too light to be James's. Then a thud, followed by a muffled curse. James flipped on lights as he moved through the cabin. Catherine slipped from bed, following at a distance, heart pounding. In the kitchen, doorway, she froze. The back door stood open, swinging gently in the night breeze. On the floor, a trail of muddy footprints led from the threshold toward the living room. Small footprints, a woman's. "Someone's been inside," James said unnecessarily. Rifle held ready. He gestured to the security monitor on the kitchen counter. "System shows rear door breach at 2:43 a.m. Why didn't the alarm sound?" Catherine shook her head, speechless. Someone had managed to bypass James's elaborate security, someone who knew the system well enough to silence it. "Stay behind me," James ordered, following the muddy trail with cautious steps. The footprints led to the living room, circled the coffee table, then disappeared near the front windows. Whoever had made them was gone. "They knew exactly when to come," James muttered, checking locks and latches. During the 10-second camera reset after power fluctuation, Catherine studied the footprints while James systematically searched each room. They were deliberate, not the frantic marks of someone rushing. Their owner had moved with purpose, knew where they were going. "Nothing missing that I can tell," James announced, returning to the living room. "But they left something," he pointed, to the coffee table. There in the center lay a single photograph, a Polaroid, its colors slightly faded with age. Catherine moved closer. The image showed a younger James and a blonde woman standing outside this very cabin, arms around each, other smiling. On the back, written in faded blue ink, J&E honeymoon, May 2018. "Eleanor," Catherine whispered, recognizing the woman from the photos in the family album. James's expression darkened as he snatched up the photograph. "This is impossible." "She's dead?" Catherine challenged. "Or just missing? Which is it, James?" His eyes flickered with calculation. "This is a sick game someone's playing. A forgery planted to manipulate you. Then why break in during a storm? Why not mail it like the locket?" Catherine gestured to the muddy footprints. "Someone risked a lot to deliver this message personally." James crumpled the photograph in his fist. "Go back to bed. I'll clean this up. What if she comes back?" "She won't." His voice carried such cold certainty that Catherine shivered. "I'm going to make sure of that." As James moved to the front windows, scanning the darkness with narrowed eyes, Catherine noticed something he'd missed. A small rectangle of white, partially visible beneath the sofa. While he was distracted, she casually knelt, pretending to examine a muddy footprint while palming the object. Once back in the bedroom, bathroom door safely locked, Catherine examined her find. A business card for Boulder County District Attorney's office. On the back, handwritten, "Tomorrow noon, be ready." The intruder, Eleanor, hadn't come just to leave a photograph. She'd come to deliver a promise. Help was coming. Catherine had less than 12 hours to prepare for whatever would happen at noon. She flushed the toilet to mask any sounds, then tore the card into tiny pieces and washed them away. The message was committed to memory, the evidence destroyed. When she emerged, James was reinstalling the back door's electronic lock, rifle propped nearby. "No more unexpected guests," he promised, his smile chilling. "I've made some adjustments to the security system." Catherine nodded, hiding her hope behind fear that wasn't entirely feigned. "Good. I don't like surprises." Noon couldn't come soon enough. Morning arrived with clear skies and James's increasing paranoia. He triple-checked every window, tested every lock, and repositioned cameras for maximum coverage. The rifle never left his side. From the kitchen, Catherine watched the clock inch toward noon, her anticipation carefully masked as fear. "The roads should be clear enough to leave today," she suggested, setting a cup of coffee before him. "After last night's break-in, Maybe we should return to the city. James didn't look up from the security monitor. No one's going anywhere. The mudslides won't be cleared for days. But enough, Catherine. His tone left no room for argument. We're staying. No more discussion. She retreated, sensing his fraying control. Something about the photograph had shaken him deeply, not just the intrusion, but the image itself. James had stared at it for hours before finally burning it in the fireplace, watching the edges curl and blacken with disturbing intensity. As noon approached, Catherine positioned herself in the living room with a book, maintaining a clear view of both the front door and the forest beyond the windows. James paced between vantage points, checking and rechecking his phone, despite the lack of signal. At exactly 11:58, Catherine set down her book. I need some water. In the kitchen, she filled a glass while slipping the hunting knife from its hiding place into her waistband, concealed beneath her sweater. Whatever happened next, she would be armed. The grandfather clock in the hallway began to chime noon. 1, 2, 3. James tensed, rifle ready as he moved to the front windows. Something's wrong, he muttered, scanning the tree line. The cameras aren't cycling properly. 4, 5, 6. Catherine positioned herself near the kitchen doorway, one hand close to the hidden knife. Maybe the storm damaged them. 7, 8, 9. Impossible. I checked everything this morning. His fingers tightened on the rifle. Someone's interfering with the signal. 10, 11, 12. The final chime echoed through the cabin. Nothing happened. James's shoulders relaxed fractionally. False alarm. Your mysterious rescuer seems to have... The front door burst open with a splintering crash. James spun, raising the rifle, but froze at the sight in the doorway. Eleanor Hayes stood on the threshold, blonde hair pulled back, face harder than in her photographs, but unmistakably the same woman. In her steady hands, a pistol aimed directly. At James, don't move, she commanded, voice like steel. Put the rifle down slowly. James remained still, expression shifting from shock to calculated charm. Eleanor, you're alive. I've been looking for... Save it. Her eyes flicked to Catherine. Are you hurt? Catherine shook her head, stunned into silence by the confirmation of her suspicions standing before her. The rifle, James, Eleanor repeated. Down, now. He lowered it fractionally. Eleanor, whatever you think happened, I know exactly what happened. She stepped fully into the cabin, keeping the pistol trained on him. I know about the embezzlement, the offshore accounts, the conservation land that was never purchased. Her voice hardened. I know you tried to kill me on that boat when I threatened to expose you. James set the rifle on the floor with deliberate slowness. You're confused, darling. You've been unwell. Stop. Eleanor's finger tightened on the trigger. I've spent 5 years gathering evidence against you, building a case, recording your crimes. Understanding dawned on Catherine. You've been watching us, the figure in the family photos. Eleanor nodded without taking her eyes off James. I needed you to know you weren't alone, that someone was watching. She gestured to Catherine. With her free hand, Come here, stay behind me. Catherine moved cautiously around the room's perimeter, keeping distance between herself and James. As she neared Eleanor, James lunged for the rifle. Don't! Eleanor shouted. Too late. James had the weapon, swinging it toward them. Catherine pulled the kitchen knife from her waistband and threw it with desperate force. It struck James's shoulder, disrupting his aim as the rifle discharged. The bullet splintered the doorframe as Eleanor fired her pistol. James staggered back, blood blooming on his shirt, not from the knife, which had only grazed him, but from Eleanor's bullet. He looked down in apparent disbelief, then back up with rage contorting his features. You were dead, he hissed, raising the rifle again despite his wound. Not quite, Eleanor replied, taking careful aim for a second shot. But you were right about one thing, James. What's that? He snarled. History does repeat itself. Eleanor's smile was cold. You brought Catherine to the same cabin, made the same mistakes, and now You'll face the same justice I've been planning. For 5 years. Time seemed to freeze in the cabin's living room. James, bleeding but defiant, kept the rifle trained on Eleanor. Eleanor's pistol remained steady, aimed at his chest. Catherine stood behind her, knife now gone, searching for another weapon. "You won't shoot me again," James said, his voice eerily calm despite the blood soaking his shirt. "You never could. Follow through, Eleanor. Always the hesitation, the moral quandary. That's why it was so easy." The cabin's rear door crashed open. "FBI, drop your weapons." Armed agents in tactical gear poured into the room from both entrances. James, startled, swung the rifle toward the new threat. A deafening shot rang out, not from Eleanor's pistol, but from an agent's weapon. James collapsed, the rifle clattering to the floor. "Suspect down. Secure the weapon." An agent shouted as others rushed to surround James, checking his pulse and applying pressure to his wounds. A female agent approached Catherine and Eleanor. "Miss Hayes, Miss Winters, are you injured?" Catherine shook her head, unable to form words, as the reality of rescue washed over her. Eleanor lowered her pistol, surrendering it grip first to the agent. "I had to draw him out," Eleanor explained. "Make him show his true intentions." "You took a hell of a risk," the agent replied, holstering Eleanor's weapon. "But it worked. We got everything on camera." Catherine looked between them in confusion. "You're working together?" Eleanor nodded. "Special Agent Daniels has been my handler for the past 2 years. Ms. Hayes approached the FBI after faking her death," Agent Daniels explained, guiding Catherine to a chair. "She had evidence of Mr. Hayes's financial crimes, but needed more to prove the attempted murder." Paramedics entered, moving directly. To James, one called out, "He's stable. GSW to the shoulder, non-lethal." Eleanor's face showed no emotion as she watched them work on her would-be murderer. 5 years, she said quietly. 5 years hiding, watching, gathering evidence, building a case no jury could ignore. Catherine struggled to process everything. The photos in the album. You inserted yourself. Digital manipulation. I needed to send you a warning without alerting James. Eleanor sat beside her. "When I saw your engagement announcement in the paper, I knew he'd found his next victim. The same pattern. A woman with financial expertise, isolated from friends and family, brought to this cabin where you were supposed to have your accident," Catherine finished, understanding dawning. "Just like I was." Eleanor nodded grimly. "The first night here, he disabled my phone, removed the boat's emergency beacon. When I confronted him about the embezzlement, he became violent. I barely escaped the boat before he capsized it. We've been building this case methodically," Agent Daniels interjected. "Financial crimes, attempted murder, kidnapping. The evidence you found in the fireplace was planted for you. We needed to document James's reaction when he discovered you had it." "You used me as bait," Catherine said, a flicker of anger cutting through her shock. "I tried to warn you," Eleanor replied. "The locket, the album, the message in the guest book, but James moved too quickly. By the time we realized he'd changed your honeymoon destination, you were already isolated here." Agent Daniels added, "We've been monitoring since you arrived. The delivery driver, the caretaker, all undercover agents establishing surveillance. We needed irrefutable evidence of his intent." Catherine's mind spun with implications. "The cameras in the cabin." "We hijacked his security feed," Eleanor confirmed. "Every threat, every confession, all recorded as evidence." Outside, helicopter rotors thundered overhead as more agents secured the perimeter. Paramedics wheeled James out on a stretcher, agents flanking him. Despite his injuries, they secured his wrists with handcuffs. As he passed, James locked eyes with Catherine. "She manipulated you," he said weakly. "Used you just like she's using." "Them, Eleanor's the criminal." "Save it for court," an agent interrupted, steering the stretcher toward the door. Eleanor approached Catherine, keeping a respectful distance. "I never wanted you caught in this. I tried to reach you before the wedding, but you saved my life." Catherine interrupted, the full weight of her narrow escape finally hitting her. "He would have killed me, just like he tried to kill me." Eleanor extended her hand tentatively. "We have a lot to talk about." Catherine took Eleanor's offered hand, forming an unlikely alliance forged in shared trauma. "Yes," she agreed, watching as James was loaded into the helicopter. "I think we—" 6 months later, Catherine sat in the witness stand, her voice steady as she recounted the events at the mountain cabin. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, conservation donors, and curious members of the public all drawn to the sensational case of James Hayes, the renowned conservationist turned criminal. After finding Eleanor's journal, Catherine testified, "I realized Mr. Hayes had attempted to recreate with me the same scenario that led to Eleanor's supposed drowning." From her seat at the prosecution table, Eleanor gave Catherine an encouraging nod. Though they'd started as strangers linked by the same manipulative man, they'd developed a genuine friendship over the months of trial preparation. James sat at the defense table, his expression carefully neutral. The charismatic mask he'd worn for years had slipped, revealing the calculating predator beneath. He avoided looking at either of his wives, instead whispering occasionally to his attorney. As Catherine stepped down from the witness stand, the prosecutor approached the bench with a final piece of evidence, a silver FBI badge. "The people call. Special Agent Meredith Daniels," she announced. Agent Daniels took the stand, explaining how Eleanor had contacted the FBI 2 years after her disappearance. Ms. Hayes had been gathering evidence of financial crimes committed by the defendant, Daniels testified. "She approached us with documentation of over $12 million embezzled from 3 separate conservation funds established by Mr. Hayes." The agent detailed how Eleanor had worked as a confidential informant while the FBI built their case, how they'd discovered James's pattern of marrying women with financial expertise who might uncover his schemes, and how they documented his attempts to silence both Eleanor and Catherine. The surveillance operation at the cabin recorded the defendant's confession to financial crimes, his admission that Ms. Hayes didn't die accidentally, and his clear intent to harm Ms. Winters, Agent Daniels concluded. During cross-examination, James's attorney tried to paint Eleanor as a vindictive ex-wife manufacturing evidence, but the FBI's documentation was irrefutable. Video from the cabin showed James confessing, threatening Catherine, disabling the car to prevent her escape. When the verdict came 3 days later, guilty on all counts including attempted murder, kidnapping, and financial fraud, Catherine felt not triumph but relief. The nightmare was finally ending. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed with questions. Eleanor, now accustomed to the spotlight after months of proceedings, handled them with practiced composure. "Justice has been served," she stated, "but more importantly, the funds James stole will be returned to legitimate conservation efforts." Catherine stood slightly apart, still uncomfortable with the attention. As the crowd dispersed, Eleanor approached. "Her. Dinner?" she suggested. "I think we've earned it." Over pasta and wine at a quiet restaurant, away from cameras and questions, they finally relaxed. "What will you do now?" Catherine asked. "Return to accounting?" Eleanor shook her head. "Too many memories. I've been thinking about something different. A foundation to help women recognize and escape financial abuse. The patterns James used, the isolation techniques, they're surprisingly common." "That sounds meaningful," Catherine mused. "The museum offered me my job back, but I'm not sure I want to return either." "You could join me," Eleanor suggested. "Your experience as a conservator, preserving historical artifacts, it's not so different from preserving evidence, documenting patterns. We could help other women piece together the clues they might be missing." Catherine considered the unexpected proposal. 6 months ago, she'd been a bride preparing for what she thought would be the happiest day of her life. Now she was divorced, From a man who had never legally been her husband, testifying in a high-profile criminal case and contemplating a complete career change. Yet somehow it felt right. The skills that had made her vulnerable to James, her attention to detail, her methodical analysis, could now become tools to help others. Partners? Eleanor extended her hand across the table. Partners, Catherine agreed, accepting the handshake. As they left the restaurant, Catherine glanced at a newsstand featuring James's conviction on the front page. The headline read, "Conservationist Hayes sentenced to 30 years. Below it, a smaller headline announced, "Former Victims Launch Foundation to Combat Financial Abuse." Their story wasn't ending with James's conviction, it was just beginning. From the ashes of dual deceptions had emerged an unexpected alliance, a shared purpose, and the promise of helping others recognize the warning signs they themselves had missed until it was almost too late.